Alright, hello guys, how's it going? I hope everybody had a great New Year's. It is now 2022, and today we need to talk about a storm that has progressively looked more and more major for the Mid-Atlantic, and I guess portions of the northeastern United States. That is a snowstorm, by the way. So we're going to be talking all about that as well as the upcoming pattern as well. Anyways, before I get into things, be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. For today's comment of the day, I want to know, what do you think is the maximum snowfall we see with this snowstorm? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Let's get straight into things, and right now we're taking a look at our current radar imagery here on screen. And we can see this storm is just really elongated along the eastern United States here. We can just see it extending here from Texas all the way up through into about the New England states. This is a bit of a cold front here. It's going to be warm throughout the day today for a lot of regions, but this is moving through quite rapidly. And at some point overnight, depending on where you're at, this is going to move through, and that's going to bring the cold air behind it. It'll look like this. Cold on this side, still warm on this side, and that's going to be where the rain snow line is. It's a very complicated system, and depending on the speed of that and a multitude of different things, that could determine how much snowfall you see. This one reminds me of a storm where you're either going to get a ton of snow, like more than what you're expecting, or you're going to get way less than what you're expecting, and it could really swing either way, just because of how many complicated things are involved here and how many moving parts here. We see this developing here, snow. This is pretty surprising, actually, and this is, very far south. Let's just zoom into that, actually. So we see snow developing south of Dallas, kind of like snow squalls, I would say. They're very short-lived, but this region, we've seen these snow showers really build in, as you can see. Super interesting setup, and even areas up here in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas there. We've seen some of those develop as well. Obviously, this is just proving how cold this cold front really is. Now, let's zoom into the southeast here, and these areas are going to get much colder. We can see this line developing here. Right there is right about where that cold front is at this point. We see a lot of areas in here getting heavy rainfall. These are the areas that are going to be seeing snowfall later tonight, so very interesting setup. One factor for sure is that there is heavy rainfall coming down for all of the regions that are expecting snowfall. And as you know, if you get snowfall, which, 99% of the people in the United States have at least seen a snow event take place, or I guess 95, I should say, or maybe even less, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage is, but regardless, you know that if it rains beforehand, that's not going to be productive for more snow to stick. It's going to really actually kind of halt that snow from sticking right away for at least the first hour or more. That combined with the fact that it was literally 75 degrees yesterday for a lot of regions as well, that's going to keep the ground warmer. The rain is going to soak the ground. Those two things combined are bad factors. And I live in Eastern Virginia here, somewhere in here, and you guys know, with those two things combined, I really feel like the chances of snow sticking in this region are very low. Even, south of Richmond, east of Richmond, things like that. North of Richmond, if we get that snow, I think there's a good chance it does stick, but I'm not too optimistic about snow sticking at all, actually. I've seen events take place like this where it looks like you could get 2 to 4 inches of snowfall, but every single, one of those 2 to 4 inches just melts on contact. So yes, it could be 2 to 4 inches if the ground was cold, but it just cannot stick. It would take extremely heavy snowfall to stick, and I'm just not really sure if that's going to take place. Let's move up here to a little bit further north. We do see some snow showers moving in like this. This is a completely separate system, and it's just interesting to see this taking place as well. We see a lot of Michigan, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, northern Ohio seeing some snowfall there, as well as upstate New York and northern Vermont seeing some of that snowfall. This has also moved into northern Maine as well, and then we're seeing rainfall more on the southern extent of this. Again, further soaking the ground. So this is all worth noting. I really think this is a complicated system, and if this winter had been overall cold so far, and we didn't have those 75-degree days, we could maybe get past the rain. You know, that's pretty typical in some circumstances where it switches from rain to snow, and it does eventually stick. But with the 75 degrees yesterday, nearly 70 degrees today for a lot of regions, it's just tough. It's just tough to picture that accumulating. Okay, so here is about right now or a little bit later this morning on the European model. We're going to take a look at the European model. We're actually going to compare it to some higher resolution models because we are within 24 hours of this storm really getting going for the mid-Atlantic. So we're going to use some shorter range, more high resolution models as well a little bit later on. But for now, let's just use this. And let's just take this to about, let's take it to about 2 a.m. tonight. This is when things are going to really get going. For a lot of regions. We see our low pressure system here. Look at this cold air behind this. I mean, this is extreme. We see snowfall here and probably some really warm air still pouring into the eastern United States right there. So the difference in temperature, let's just say from eastern North Carolina to western North Carolina is just going to be extreme by this point. Let's take a look here at the actual temperatures. So we see 66 in southeastern North Carolina, 62 for the Outer Banks. And then we see 30s here for the mountains. So, you know, a 30-degree difference at least there for a lot of these states. And I mean, it's the same here from eastern South Carolina or coastal South Carolina and then upstate South Carolina. Let's take eastern Virginia, 53, to western Virginia, all the way down to like 32. So there's a huge difference here because that cold front is just passing through. And again, if it was colder beforehand, I would just feel so much more confident about accumulation, but that's just not how I feel at this point. And snow gets even heavier as we actually just move it on about 3 more hours. We see a 997 millibar low pressure center here. The storms are going to move just like this. Maybe even closer to the coast, actually, is what's been kind of the trend here. Could even... I did that wrong again. Here we go. Let's do it right this time. It could move very, very close to the coast here. Because I think a lot of these regions are going to get a lot more than what these models have been calling for. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, it would need a serious north trend to include you guys. But at this point, it trended so far north yesterday, I would not be surprised if that trending kind of continues. We see heavy, heavy snowfall developing by this point for Tennessee, northern Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia, as well as West Virginia. Let's move this on another 3 hours, and you can see things rapidly cooling, that rain-snow line just shoving itself further and further south. Just like that. The initiation of this storm actually takes a little bit longer than original model guidance suggested. Again, it is going to move just offshore of these regions. But what's interesting is above the surface, these areas are going to get below freezing, even these areas really close to the low pressure center. That's usually your biggest concern when the low pressure system is really close to the coast, is that those coastal regions, the middle layers or the upper layers of air kind of go above freezing. Or not the upper layers, that would be a little bit extreme, but kind of the middle layers. Some of those middle layers going above freezing, and that causes sleet because then it falls as snow, kind of melts into a rain droplet, and then refreezes again. That's what happens when the middle layers are above freezing. But in this case, even though that low pressure system comes very close to the coast, those regions kind of stay below freezing all the way to the surface, and then you're at about 34 to 36 degrees, which it would be snowfall in most cases. Let's continue this on, and the rain-snow line by about... This would be about maybe 8 to 10 a.m. On Monday morning, tomorrow, obviously. We can see this rain-snow line really pushing further and further south. We see the low-pressure system is right here over the Outer Banks. Going to, again, continue to move just about like this. And we see extremely heavy snowfall for these regions. And that's really what it's going to take to accumulate is these heavier bands. If it can take place to this extent, I would not be surprised if it starts to stick pretty rapidly here in these areas that kind of take on a purplish or more magenta tint there. So for central Virginia, southern Maryland, Delaware, areas like that, if this model is correct, those heavier bands would begin to accumulate because at a certain point, it's coming down so fast it can't help but accumulate. So it really just depends on a lot of things. Again, that's why it's a very low confidence storm at this point. We see this heavier snowfall really take place here as well. And for eastern Virginia and northern North Carolina, again, this is what it would take, these heavier bands. Even these bands that seem a little bit lighter, that's still on the heavier half of our snowfall scale there. So that would be coming down quite hard there by that point. And southern New Jersey, the Delmarva, really seeing it by this point as well, as you can see. Let's continue this on, and this is by about 3 p.m. This is when things start to move out. There we see a little bit of southern New England trying to get involved, but I don't think it pulls up the coast quite enough. It kind of slides off like this. If it took on more of a track like that, you would see these areas get a little bit more, but it just doesn't take place. It's so close. But by the time we're reaching about 11 p.m. tomorrow night, this will be completely moved offshore and completely done for the most part. So on this European model, here is what the snowfall totals, not including any melting or anything like that. This is the snowfall totals that fall out of the sky would look like. And I can even zoom into the mid-Atlantic in a minute, but your grays are going to be your dusting, if anything. And I think with this storm, you can really say that dusting area, that gray area, is going to be no accumulation here on this graphic. The blues is where I think you might get 1 or 2 inches here on this graphic. This is indicating that 2 to 6 inches of snowfall would fall out of the sky in the blue regions, but I really think 2 to 4 would be pretty much what these blue areas would get. The purple indicates 6 to 10 falling out of the sky. I think if you get in the purple on this graphic, you're probably looking at about 4 to 6. Again, I'm kind of diminishing a few of those inches for the ground temperatures, the air temperatures, the soaked ground factors like that. And then these pink regions, I think that's where you're maybe at the true 6 to 10, as in the pink region showing up here. So I think 6 to 10 is probably the bullseye on this storm. Maybe 12 inches if it really comes down early on and doesn't struggle to accumulate in some of these northern areas. But these areas have still been very warm, and they're still going to get soaked throughout the day today. So with those two factors in mind, I do think that pretty much everybody with this storm will struggle to get that initiation of accumulation. The graphic I like more here is the snow total depth. So what this is doing is this is including anything like melting, mixed precipitation, soaked ground. This is how much snow sticks to the ground according to this model. Let me zoom in here to the Mid-Atlantic where the heaviest totals are expected. And again, this looks a lot like what I was saying, 6 to 10 in these pink, in the areas that were pink on the last graphic. So that's kind of your bullseye. These areas struggling to get an inch or two here in the gray, maybe 2 inches here for areas north of Raleigh through the Hampton Roads area. That is if it can accumulate in these areas at all, which I'm doubtful of. Now, Richmond, this is saying 2 to 4 inches possible. I think on the lower end of that seems more likely. The Delmarva here, anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe approaching 6 inches here, right in the bullseye. I like this. I like this graphic a lot, and I think there's good agreement from the models. So I do think this is a pretty realistic outcome here. Okay, let's take a look at our NAM 3KM model. This is a very high resolution model that tends to overdo precipitation amounts, so we'll be watching for that. But here is that heavy snowfall coming down throughout the night tonight, moving in very quickly. And this one keeps the rain snow line very far north, as you can see. This model does tend to do this as well, but sometimes it's right when it does this, and the other models are wrong. It would keep these areas in rain. Whereas on the other models, like the European we just took a look at, it would be snow. And those areas struggle to become snow until very last minute here in eastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina, as well as northern North Carolina. It just struggles to become snow as well until about the afternoon hours of tomorrow on Monday. So this model says, hey, it's going to stay rain a lot longer than what the other models are calling for, and then it eventually moves out. So let's take a look at the total snowfall on this model, which again, you want to take off a few inches from this, but grays is a dusting, if anything. Really on this one, it's pretty much nothing. 2 to 4 in the blue, in my opinion. 4 to 6 maybe in the purple, and then 6 to 10 there in the pinks. Let's take a look at that. Can we get no, we cannot get the total snow. I thought we could get the snowfall depth total. Maybe we can get it on our NAM 12KM model. You used to be able to get it on there, but we can't get it today. So we're just going to have to roll with that. I really think you just take multiple inches off of all of these. The pink should be in the purple. The blue should be in the gray. The gray should be pretty much nothing, etc. I think you guys get the point here. I think there's just going to be a lot less accumulation than what the models are showing falling from the sky. What ends up sticking to the ground is just going to be much, much different. Let's see what the GFS is calling for here. Very, very high totals. But again, this is just not what's going to end up actually being on the ground. And even when we take a look at that 10-to-1 ratio here, not too much different. So we can't get the snow depth total on this either, but it would be much, much less than this. I really like this graphic here by the European model. Let me find it. This one, I think this is much, much more in line with what will end up actually happening. So again, maybe a couple of inches in these darker gray areas. Lighter gray areas would be like a dusting here, so the northern and the southern extent there. Your light blues are going to be your 2 to 4 inch amounts. So we see a lot of that happening here, and then a lot of that happening here as well. And then our darker blues and purples is going to be more like 4 to 6 inches of snowfall there, maybe pushing on 10 or 12 in some of the heaviest pockets here, like the Delmarva or Central Virginia, perhaps, or even Southern New Jersey. I guess it could happen as well. Anyway, guys, for today's confidence tab, we're at a 4 out of 6. Confidence is a bit lower because of those factors that I mentioned. Wet ground, warm ground. It's been 70s for 2 days straight. Those are factors that are definitely going to hold us back a little bit depending on the situation. And then, you know, how heavy will the snow come down? There's so many question marks that my confidence is at a 4 out of 6 just because it's just very uncertain what's going to happen at this point as far as totals. For today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons, Bill Crates, James Wade, Dovin Nagel, Larry LePan, Mandy Birchfield, Patrick Strickland, Dave Scott, and Donna Carnes as well. I would also like to thank our diamond patrons, Bill Roberts, Marcus Connolly, Noah Harley, Michael Cotalessa, Catbite, Charles Tinnett, Bill Dallas, Gary's, and John Quilisi also. I would also like to thank our channel members, Catbite, Stephen Finn, and Jeremy Cox as well. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. I'll see you guys in the next video.